MSP Foundry's Ronnie Parisella joins this week to share his insights on news from TD SYNNEX, Keeper, Datto, and BLOKWORX, plus a special guest interview with MSP Growth Coalition CEO Juan Fernandez on the past, present, and future of managed services. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 224, The Swirl. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 224. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine show for the folks like you, the VARs, the IT integrators, the managed services providers, the managed security services provider, the managed IT hardware integrator providers. If your company evolves around managed something, you're probably in the right place. If your company revolves around, let's say, baking donuts in your local bakery, hey, you know what? You might be in the right place too. You never know, because we welcome one and all here. And if you have donuts, you are required to share. That is my only requirement for being on the show. So awesome stuff. Joining me each and every week is the man of the hour, the guy who runs things around here and keeps things running smooth, executive editor, Rich Freeman.
And I just came up with an idea so great, I'm afraid to bring it up on the podcast, but donuts as a service. We're talking.
Yes, we do need donuts as a service, particularly the frosted kind. Let me ask you, Rich, filled or frosted? Which way do you lean?
Since I was a very, very young lad, jelly donuts have always been a particular passion. So I'm going to go filled. Although I will not turn down iced.
Yeah, that's the right glazed donut is just something to be cherished. But I also like the filled ones too. Like, is there really such thing as a? Let me ask a different question. I'm going to ask our guest the question in a second too. Is there such thing as a bad donut?
Only stale ones.
only. Well, okay, so. Other than an expired or week old donut, is there any such thing as a bad fresh donut?
I'll eat
it. He's got no standards when it comes to donuts. And who is that person who will eat just about anything? That is our awesome guest host today, Ronnie Parisella. He's a senior IT professional with more than 20 years of high-level experience. Today, he's co-founder of and a managed services consultant with MSP Foundry, which is a managed services consultancy committed to getting its partners to achieve 20% or better gross profits in their service practices. Please welcome him back to the show, Mr. Ronnie. How are you, sir?
Hello, everybody. I think this is fourth time's the charm.
Is it your fourth? I know it's at least your third. After we've done as many shows as we have, it kind of blends together. But let's see. This is your fourth appearance on the show. I don't know if that's quite a record yet, but that is close. But it's awesome to have you back. For those who may not have caught one of those 4 other appearances, tell us a little bit more about you and what you do.
Started out as an engineer in the 90s, worked my way up. Now I'm doing high-level project management for mostly AV projects, Fortune 500s, playing with some very cool technology, Crestron and Extron and Biamp. Oh my! A lot of channel stuff. Still staying active in the communities and doing what I can to help out fellow MSPs. Just avoid the pitfalls that I, fell into 3 times along the way.
So it's been a long road. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you've evolved and where you've gotten today in some of your older businesses.
Well, my first business was Parisella Consulting, just a break fix, late 90s when I was still working at Scholastic Books in New York, and took that out on my own and started an MSP and did pretty well. We made it to gold partners, competency with Microsoft, Cisco, Dell, and a few others. Enjoyed it, sold the business, split with my partner, and since then I've kind of been a consultant to the industry, bouncing around, helping out service companies where they need it. Sometimes I'm doing sales, sometimes I'm doing project management, sometimes I'm doing HR. I've worn all those hats for my businesses up along the way, so it's easy for me just to hop in and add a little wisdom.
Very cool. You mentioned you're doing a lot of work these days with some of the larger Fortune 500 companies and lots of really cool technologies. Tell us a little bit about what's exciting you these days and what you're working with.
Well, along with the rest of the world, conferences and Zoom and everything like that has, become forefront technology and required for the business. So a lot of Fortune 500s are revamping and redoing all of their boardrooms and conference rooms and tech rooms and huddle rooms and spaces and phone rooms and things like that. And it's, you know, we put as much cable in one conference room as we would have in an old company. You know, it could be 50 or 60 Cat 6 shielded Ethernet cables in one room, just driving the AV rack and the speakers and the mics and the TVs and everything else, the control systems that go along with it. So, you know, understanding where those systems, how they play together, what things won't work. I was called in as a sub on a project for a company that sold the technology that is going to be released as an update in December. So, you know, there's all sorts of gotchas along the way, and keeping it nice and steady for the customers today, keeping the hardware flowing, working with companies that don't have major chip shortfalls and product fulfillment issues is tough these days. So a lot of times we're going with hardware that isn't what the customer wanted, but it's available. So I think in a year, 18 months, when supply chains loosen up a little bit, which I believe they inevitably will, I think it's going to be a tremendous, tremendous boom on AV companies, AV hardware and installations.
You know, there's a lot of MSPs that don't do AV. It seems like you kind of go one way or the other, but I have to imagine, especially these days, there's a lot of integration between those two things. Tell us a little bit about what opportunities your typical IT reseller might have in AV that they're not thinking about.
There is almost no integration. The interesting part is that once we do a room and the room is set up, there's only one IP that goes to the customer network. There's very little that needs to go out to the internet for anything. The rooms don't talk to each other. So in terms of integrating, there's very little. You're basically selling closed-end solutions, which isn't what MSPs do.
Interesting.
MSPs don't do this. MSPs don't sell an island that you can't get to. MSPs don't sell a network without security, things like that. And AV is rife with those type of normal occurrences. So it's very different than selling MSP, selling a network, speeds and feeds. You know, you can get into just the video quality or the audio quality, or how many mics are in a room, or how many speakers you need for a space. And you could be looking at several $100,000 for one room, normal cost. So I think it's a size, scope, and complexity difference from the normal MSP networking, servers, workstations, users, CALs, stuff like that. It's very, very different.
And I assume that those are not sold on kind of like a managed level, right? Those are just project works, one and done, right?
Well, the better companies sell service and support and project management ongoing as well, of course, because updates, patches, changes, especially since, you know, in the system where we sold a system where you need to update it at the end of the year. We have to be back involved for that. So it's complex, and there are a lot of players, and every big company is in the space. Microsoft Surface is in the space. Cisco Telepresence is in the space. Polycom is all over the space. So if you're not in one of those major lanes, then you have to play with the companies that play with that technology, or you have to know it all. And MSPs, that's a tough sell for an MSP. A lot of times a larger MSP will have an AV team, which will consist of 1, 2, or more people handling those types of certifications and trainings and everything else that you have to stay up on. The sales alone on the AV stuff is a whole body's worth of work.
And I'll just jump in to point out, because I'm sitting in Phoenix right now. I'm attending a distributor conference, and all of the distributors, TD SYNNEX, Ingram, D&H, they all kind of, want you to know that they have tons of AV expertise in-house. So if you are an MSP and this is all new to you and it's a different model and you don't know the products or any of that, you can outsource that, white label it through a distributor and still make some money doing this. It's an appreciated service by the end user, especially right now when everybody's reopening offices, trying to figure out how to connect the hybrid workforce, so the people who are physically in the room with the people who are off-site but need to participate in the meeting. The customers really need these solutions. They're investing in this stuff right now. You can be the hero who helps them with that, even if you don't do it ordinarily, by partnering with somebody else who does.
Now, I'm a big fan of staying in the channel when you're a smaller MSP and you're learning and you have to establish your presence with many different manufacturers. Let your distributor do it for you. Ingram Micro has and I'm an Ingram fan, and I'm going to speak about them. They have a product called pre-sales technical support, which isn't that. What it is you call up and you tell them the 20 products you want to buy, and they tell you if it's all going to work together. They tell you if it's compatible. If there are any issues with that solution, they'll take it back without RMAs or restocking fees. So that level of hand-holding, and I've done 8-hour calls with Ingram pre-sales tech support, putting together a network back in the day. It is normal. If you just have to qualify for the level, I don't know what they call their tiers these days, but you have to sell a certain amount to qualify for it. But once you do, you should never have a solution that does not work together. Otherwise, Ingram's going to back it and take it back. Now, I've never used them for installation services, but the pre-sales is fantastic.
Very cool. That's good advice. So, Ronnie, last time you were on, it was so long ago in 2021, still mired in lockdowns and other things like that. So, how's things going otherwise? Are you getting out and about more? What kind of things are you doing these days?
Yeah, I trying to stay on the road for clients. That's fun. I like being out there and, you know, making sure things go well and then on to the next one. So it's nice that the world is loosening up. You know, I'm vaccinated. I believe in staying safe and everything like that. I wear my mask where I have to, but it's nice when you don't. It's nice to get back to normal, and, you know, getting back out there and just staying safe and doing work is really what I want to do.
Very cool. Picked up any new outdoor hobbies, or what else are you doing to keep yourself entertained these days?
Well, I bought a house recently, and some friends of mine were very, very generous, and they bought me a big green egg, a big smoker. So
Nice.
that should be delivered soon, and then I will be in the backyard smoking, getting sunburnt, and loving life.
Awesome. I also am led to believe you recently acquired a weed whacker and are finding this an entertaining tool. Tell us about your first foray into lawn maintenance.
I'm a city kid. I never had a lawn before. I was raised in Brooklyn. So now that I have a lawn and having to deal with these things is it's fun. I'm sure it won't be fun after I have to mow the lawn 50 times, but the first time was fun.
Awesome stuff. Well, welcome to home ownership. I will say that I did enjoy the first 3 times I had to mow a lawn. I can't say I much enjoyed it much past that, but it is good exercise and it does keep you outside. So that's good. Awesome stuff. Well, it's a great you're back on. It's always a joy when you're here talking to us, and we've got a lot we're going to go through, folks. We've got lots of stuff in the news that we're going to talk about. There's some stuff from TD SYNNEX keepers in the news. We're going to talk about Datto. We're going to talk about BLOKWORX. We've got an awesome interview coming up with Juan Fernandez. He's the CEO of the MSP Growth Coalition. We're going to talk about managed services in general, but mostly kind of the future of managed services, where we see that's going to be a fascinating discussion and a whole lot more. So strap in, folks. Here we go. Rich, 4 facts of life for the channel today is what, according to TD SYNNEX partners?
Well, you know, I hinted at the fact that for those of you watching on video and seeing me in yet another hotel room, that I'm in Phoenix. I've been attending a meeting of one of TD SYNNEX's 3 partner communities. They have 3 of those now. One of them, which originated with Tech Data, is called Tech Select. Tech Select partners, so each of these communities kind of focuses on different things. The Varnex community is sort of endpoint and edge oriented. Stellar is cloud and mobile. Tech Select partners tend to focus on what TD SYNNEX calls advanced technology solutions. So think infrastructure heavy, sophisticated solutions that require integration and so on. And so I've been attending their first in-person meeting since before the pandemic, basically, here this week. And yeah, I've come away with some. I will preface this by saying just a little bit. So first of all, you know, as I indicated, the folks who are at this event are a little bit more project oriented than maybe some people in the audience who are MSPs. And then the other thing is, I don't want anyone to come away from anything I'm about to say thinking that the mood here is gloomy or anxious, or not the case at all, for reasons that will become clear. But there were some interesting things I learned about you know, market challenges, let's say, that were interesting to me. So it's been kind of a good news, bad news story in terms of the conversations I've been having. From a good news perspective, you know, the way these conferences tend to kick off is the hosting distributor gets on stage and they kind of spike the football a little bit, and you sort of expect them to do that, and you can't blame them. Sammy Kinlaw, who runs the community organization at TD SYNNEX, pointed out that just in the current fiscal quarter there, which ends at the end of this month, so they're just about done with it, the partners in those 3 communities within the US have grown revenue 15%, or $121 million. Their cloud revenue was up 13% in the quarter. Networking sales up 29% in the quarter. Interestingly, you know, the typical kind of cycle in the IT world that we're all familiar with is December is a big month. You've got the holiday purchasing season. You've got companies maybe coming to the end of their fiscal year and looking to spend money that's still lying around. So December tends to be big and January tends to be slow. And TD SYNNEX said, you know, January, you know, the first business day after New Year's arrived and everything just kind of kept going. And if anything, they've been on an upward trajectory over the course of the year. So, you know, let's focus on the good news first here, which is that TD SYNNEX is seeing very good numbers. The partners here at the conference are telling me that they're just growing like gangbusters right now. It's a really strong time right now for anyone in IT, whether they're an MSP or in another field. And, you know, some of the things that are driving that, right, is remote work and hybrid, and you've got companies reopening offices and refreshing their infrastructure, and you've got companies still equipping people to be more efficient at home. Somebody on stage from TD SYNNEX referred to this as dual infrastructure refresh, basically, in the office, at home. So all of that is good. The demand situation in IT, according to TD SYNNEX and their partners, is very, very good right now. The supply situation, not so much. And that is where some of the bad news kind of came into the picture here a little bit, because you know what, the strong demand is actually compounding the problem. We're all familiar with the logistical issues, and more recently the port shuts down in China due to the pandemic. We're familiar with the issues that have kept supplies from reaching the US, but the fact that demand is up is actually making these inventory backlogs that much worse. And so the issue that people are having, obviously, is fulfilling that demand within reasonable timeframes, and it's creating a different problem, particularly for the project-oriented partners here, that I hadn't really heard ChannelPros talking about until I had conversations with folks here, which is that cash flow is getting to be an issue for some of these people right now, because they close a deal with the customer orders a bunch of infrastructure. That's what these guys specialize in. The partner orders that stuff, but they don't actually get paid for any. So they place the order, but they don't get paid until that stuff arrives and it's been delivered and implemented, and the customer has taken acceptance of it. And so that gap and waiting for the stuff to become available is creating cash flow issues for some of the partners out here. And, you know, TD SYNNEX is making more credit available to people. They were kind of talking about partial billing. They were talking about coping mechanisms for this issue. And one of the things they talked about was partial billing. If you're used to billing the customer for 100% of the project when it's 100% completed, think about going to the customer and saying, well, look, I've got 45% of what you need now. Let's put that out there. You can pay me for that, and then you can pay me for the rest of it when I've got the rest of the stuff available to implement. And you know, a lot of partners basically said no customer is going to agree to that. But the TD SYNNEX folks said you'd be surprised. We're seeing partners have some success with that. The one other thing that I'll point out, and again, don't want to make too much of this, but I was talking with some of the partners here yesterday, and you know, they were saying, look, that they despite anything you hear in the economy about inflation and rising interest rates and so on, there's still a lot of money out there, government money, private sector money, fueling a lot of IT purchasing activity, clearly. But some of the folks I talked about here are starting to think about what happens when that isn't the case anymore. Nobody is predicting that there's a bubble and that it's going to burst imminently and that we're 6 months away from some sort of downturn. But, the word recession is cropping up in the news more and more often. These are boom times in IT. It can't last forever. And so people are starting to think a little bit about when do things turn around in the other direction, and what is that gonna mean for me, especially if the supply chain issues are still an issue and people are spending less and I have less stuff to sell as well. Again, nobody is like hoarding cash. Nobody is shifting strategy in a significant way. I talked to some people who said I'm a little bit more cautious about acquisitions. I talked to some people who are, leaning a little bit more towards recurring revenue than project work that could leave them exposed if the economy tanks a little bit. So that no big changes, nobody is expecting a problem imminently, but this is the first time in a long while that I've had conversations with multiple partners who are starting to look over the horizon a little bit and worrying about what's out there for them.
That's a very, so let me ask you a question. Do you think that in terms of the demand and is the supply chain just leading into the demand because it's not being fulfilled? So that way they're seeing a lot of additional demand in months where generally it isn't? Is that what I'm kind of gathering here?
Oh, the snake's eating the tail, boys. It is what it is. This is one of those things that in economics, everything's cyclical. There's the golden area and the depression, and things are great and things go down. As people adjust to it is how businesses are reacting. So every single economic depression we've had during the subprime and the economic downturn and all that fun stuff, IT has always been up. Always. We never slowed down. We're not going to slow down until we get to the point where we're eating our own tail. And I think we can't sell more than is available. And if you're a project business, where's your recurring revenue? Where's your mailbox money? Whoop-de-doo, you just signed a $2 million project. You won't be able to deliver that project for 18 months. Now what? How do we pay the bills next month? How do we sell lower, more available technology? How do we shift and how do we move the paradigm right now away from chips that aren't available? How do we get back to the recurring revenue model and the service model where we're not dependent on hardware? I'd say 5-6 years ago, when everybody was IoT this and cloud that, there wasn't a dependence on hardware. There wasn't, maybe we were out of the refresh cycle, but I don't think so. I think it was really just that's not what companies were pushing. Everybody was pushing their cloud and their cloud marketplace and their cows online and blah, 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 stacking up the cloud stuff. But now it's different. Now we need the hardware and we don't have it. So what is that going to do? Companies are going to spend less money. MSPs are going to make less. Distributors are going to sell less. We're going to start seeing prices come down. I think this is just a normal occurrence. If you look during COVID, supply chain in almost every industry was affected because more people were home, had more money. All the new Bitcoin millionaires, I think there was 1,000 new Bitcoin millionaires in 2 months last year, and all that money gets spent. And what does it get spent on? It gets spent on nostalgia, and it blows up the car market and the collectibles market. A Rolex has never been more expensive than it is today. Why? Is it more valuable today? No, people have more money. And it just is what it is. But I'm already starting to see the downturn, the big books, the comic book. I'm a big comic book broker. So I see the big books that hit record highs last year, 2 years ago, 50% down, 60% down. And that's not because people have less money. It's people getting bored with industries now, and they're moving on and collecting different things. So I don't think you can bet that no one's going to get bored with a vendor if you can't deliver. And I think it's the vendors that are really in bad trouble right now, considering that they can't meet consumer demand because another vendor is going to pop up that can, or it's going to be a shift. Necessity being the mother of invention. Well, if you need hardware, if you can't get hardware, you're going to do something different. So let's see what happens. But I think the downturn is inevitable. I think it's already started. And it's really a question of how companies are going to hit the supply chain.
You know, Rich mentioned that that there's some cash flow issues that are kind of occurring because of the lack of ability to get stuff and how long it takes to finally deliver projects. And I agree, Rich. I don't think it's going to be feasible in a lot of cases to go to your customers and say, "Well, I got 30% of the stuff. Let's implement 30% of the project," because usually it doesn't always work that way. You need everything in order to make it all work right. Ronnie, can you speak to how are you running into any cash flow issues, or are you seeing that out there? And what are some strategies that partners can use to make sure that they stay cash flow positive?
Okay, so it's the first thing MSPs need to do is look at their contracts. When you sell a project, what are the payment terms? Are you negotiating every time? Is it 50% down, 50% at completion? The way I always did it was 50% services now, 50% on completion. If we had to true up, little less, little more, we would do that on the second bill. But 100% of the hardware had to be paid up front before I would order anything. I've always been that way. I never fronted money for our customers. It got me into trouble early on, and we moved away from it. So you got a $60,000 project with $40,000 worth of services. I need a check for 80 grand to get going.
Wow. Rich, is that kind of the advice
that's not normal? No, most customers won't stand that.
Although the like TD SYNNEX was pointing out this week, and the other distributors do this too, they all have pretty sophisticated financing arms. And so, they're basically saying you don't necessarily have to be a bank for your customers. You can kind of let us do that because we've got a much bigger balance sheet than you do. And so the term that I've heard used a lot by the TD SYNNEX folks at the show this week is creative financing. There are creative financing options out there that can transfer some of the risk a little bit onto a distribution partner or somebody like that.
But that's only if the customer is interested in signing up with that distribution partner's credit team, filling out a credit app for the business or on their personal application, and guaranteeing that sale. That's a tough ask for a business owner, or not even a business owner potentially, who has to secure financing for a project. They usually just push on the MSP. Hey, if you want the project, order the hardware. I'll give it to you when you're done. But you have to say no to those opportunities, because when you can't get the hardware, or when there's a problem, or when you don't do it right, you're on the hook for a lot.
Very interesting. Well, lots of good stuff. Rich, anything else in this story you want to point out before we move on?
Nope. I think we've covered the key things from that story. I've got, we'll obviously have a link to the article that all of this kind of alludes to in the show notes, and I've also got some more articles coming up about other things going on at the show here. But I think that gets us started on Tech Select.
Very, very cool. Yeah. So, and as Rich was alluding to, we have all the links to all of these articles that we're going to talk about, because we're just going to give our thoughts high level. Get Ronnie's thoughts, but then there's a lot more detail in here that you need to go catch up on. So find the show sheet for episode 224. It's on the ChannelProNetwork.com website. Go there. If you, a lot of times, if you're on your phone listening, you can open up the show description area there, and those links will be in there. If you're watching on YouTube, hello, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, hit every button on YouTube. Just hit it, because
you're supposed to say subscribe up here and like down here. You got to do the finger.
Is that what it is? Subscribe up here, like down here, go this way, hit this button on the side. That's what they want you to do. Do it. And then leave a comment. That's always important too. But open up the description area on YouTube as well, and you'll see all the links in there, so you can kind of go follow along as we talk about them. So away from TD SYNNEX we go, but over to Keeper Security, who's got something new. Rich, tell us about that.
Yeah, and this is actually a story that broke last week. So we had an episode of the podcast that went out last week. That was our special bonus episode with the folks at Datto. But this is the first show that we're recording since our SMB Forum event in Chicago last week. And this is a story that broke during that show, basically, from a Chicago-based company, as it happens, called Keeper Security. And Keeper, folks who know them them probably associate them with password management. That was sort of their first product. It's still the best known. Keeper Password Manager. It's a zero trust, zero knowledge password management system, meaning you put your passwords into the vault. They are encrypted. They're encrypted at rest, encrypted in transit, and so on. You can use the passwords without ever having to share them. But they've been building beyond that basic Keeper this year into more of privileged access management, as they're calling it. And so back in January, they introduced a product called Keeper Secrets Manager. So if the password manager is for your passwords or a user's passwords, other kinds of passwords, or API keys or credentials, other kind of infrastructure related stuff that you would want to encrypt and be able to use without having to put out into the world, into the open air, can go into this product. And so the new product that they just introduced now is called Connection Manager. And basically the idea is, if you use it in conjunction with that vault full of heavily encrypted passwords and other keys and so on, this is going to give you a zero touch, zero knowledge, a safer way basically to connect with remote resources. And so if you're connecting to the office from home, for example, or, and this will become significant, if you are in an IT department or you're an MSP and you're connecting to a remote device that you're supporting, you don't have to use a conventional remote access tool, which might require you to share a password in order to gain access. You don't have to use RDP, God forbid. You don't have to use VPN. This Connection Manager tool will make that connection for you, and it'll do it in a way basically where the credentials required to make and maintain the connection are 100% encrypted 100% of the time. To further reduce the exposure to compromise there, this is an entirely browser-based solution, meaning there is no client software for the person connecting to use, and there is no agent software on the device being connected to. And so if you think about the stories that have been in the news in the last year, actually last couple of years, hackers compromising an RMM system's agent software, for example, or utilizing a remote access tool as a way to breach an MSP, breach that customer's clients. There is nothing to be compromised here because everything that's happening is happening inside the browser, and so that reduces the attack surface a little bit. And then there are things you can do around role-based access rights and least privilege principles and MFA. There are a whole bunch of other bells and whistles basically for how you can manage the access rights to remote systems. So, it's an interesting solution to look at if you're looking for a secure alternative, certainly to RDP, but maybe even to VPN as well. But one of the things that struck me as interesting about it is that at a time when the makers of managed services softwares, the Kaseyas and Enables and Dattos and ConnectWises of the world are sort of under attack and looking to harden and secure their products. I wonder how appealing it might ultimately be to MSPs to buy some of their managed services tool from a security vendor. From a company like that Keeper that started in security and got into remote access, as opposed to having to do it the other way around. Or, another company that comes to mind is Barracuda Networks, which is first and foremost a security company. People forget they've got an RMM system too, and so does that maybe present an advantage or something worth thinking about? So interesting product in a number of different ways from Keeper.
So it seems like there's a lot of things that has to go right for this to work. All of your customers' passwords need to be in here for this to work right? Is that what I'm gathering?
Just one at a time. You don't have to. You shouldn't have to move anything other than one customer at a time.
Okay, but in order for the connection manager to work properly, like that all has to be in Keeper, correct?
So you can use it without password manager and or secrets manager. That it's standalone in that respect. But to get 100% of the capabilities and a lot of what I was talking about there, that you would need the password management product. The idea is, and this is like the longer term strategy at Keeper, is they are building the suite of related a privileged access management solution. So they very much encourage you to use all this stuff together because it's the combination that makes it really work best. But you don't have to have their vault in order to use this system. You could hook it up, I guess, to something else.
Gotcha. Ronnie, that's a good point to turn it over to you to kind of talk about privileged access management. Is this a pain point for MSPs? What do you think of this solution?
Not for MSPs. I think it's a pain point for clients. And some clients handle it well. Some clients have workarounds. Some people just make do. But if you're going to implement a secure remote access policy for your team, it's got to be done with a solution like this and a policy manual and the electronic use policy. And this is not an easy thing for a company just to work with an MSP and lock it all down. They really have to define who, what, when, where, why, and how. Who's doing what? How are they getting in? What devices are they using? How are they connecting? Blah, blah, blah. And it has to be specific every time. So if there's a website that does it, that's nice. But I remember SonicWall's secure VPN, SSL VPN back in the day that was clientless, that installed the client when you connected and uninstalled it when you disconnected. That seems along the lines of what this is, but that used the radius authentication or the LDAP authentication from the main office. This, where's it coming from? It all has to be in Keeper, or it can act independently. So where's the data coming from? It sounds like a very nice product, but I'd have to see it to analyze it further.
Gotcha. And so, Rich, it says that it does not integrate with RMM tools, but that's coming.
It's definitely something that's on their radar. Yes. Yeah. Right now they put the product out there before any of that integration is there. But yeah, they're aware of the fact that this is something MSPs are going to be asking about.
Okay. And they didn't talk about pricing. So it's if you're a Keeper subscriber, you should probably go and talk to them directly about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And bring your technical questions like the ones that Ronnie was kind of hinting at there. When we were at our show in Chicago, I was chatting about this with some of the attendees there, and they were all kind of firing these questions at me about how it works. And it's like, give them a ring because I don't know, but it's worth investigating.
So Rich, you're not wearing your technician's hat at these shows, huh?
Yeah, I must have lost that hat a long time ago.
Awesome stuff. All right, cool. Well, there is a lot more in here to digest, and I'm sure people are going to have more questions. So go and check out this article and follow through on that. And if you're interested, go talk about this stuff with the folks at Keeper. We got a couple other stories we want to get to real quick before we head to our interview with Mr. Juan Fernandez. But let's see. One of these is talking about Datto. As Datto's been in the news a lot as they've been agreed to be purchased by the fine folks at Kaseya. But the Datto executives over there have a message for their partners. Rich, what is that message?
You know what the message basically is, until this deal actually gets done and we find out what it really kind of means in practice to Datto partners, post sale, post transaction, it's business as usual. And that was so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because there actually isn't a lot of new information in this article that we're kind of referencing here. But Rob Rae, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Datto, was a speaker at our conference in Chicago last week. While we were both there, I took advantage of the opportunity to sit down with him and talk with him. This is my first chance to talk with him since the deal was announced. And, basically he said what I guess is true for all of us, basically, which is, I don't have definitive answers. I mean, it's against the law, basically, for Kaseya to tell Datto, here's what we're going to do after we've successfully completed purchasing you. And so nobody really knows, like Rob said at one point in this interview, they must have a plan. That you don't spend $6.2 billion on a company unless you have a plan in mind for what you're going to do. But they can't really talk about it until this deal is done. And until they do, nobody really knows what it is. And so Rob was kind of saying, look, and between now and whenever we do know what the plan is, it's business as usual. Products are going to keep coming out. We've got a roadmap. We're continuing to progress against that. They just recently introduced some new BDR appliances and a new edition of their cloud continuity product. So they're just chugging ahead like they were before. And in the meantime, he was kind of trying to, offer a little cause for cautious optimism, some reassurance. He said, look, they spent $6.2 billion on a company that in 2021 grew revenue at 19%. So I mean, clearly Datto has been doing something reasonably right. You don't spend that kind of money on something that's working reasonably well and screw it up. Right. So, okay, maybe we don't, need to worry that they're going to toss a monkey wrench into the works or break things up or destroy what you like about the company that made it worth buying. So the other thing that he said that I think, there were a couple of things he said towards the end of the conversation that I thought were pretty wise. And some of them we've talked about probably before on the podcast. And one is, folks, avoid any knee-jerk reactions, in the short term until we kind of know what the implications of the sale are. Probably not a good idea to be doing anything, too sudden, too drastic. Give it a little bit of time to play out. And then the other thing that Rob said that I thought was good, because he's been with Datto for a long time, long enough that he can remember when the company, first accepted venture capital, and then when it was acquired by private equity, and then when it went public much more recently. And every time one of these milestones came along, there were some MSP partners who predicted disaster, right? This is going to change everything I love about the company. And in the end, that really wasn't true. And so who knows if that's the case again after this milestone in the history of Datto, but there is some reason to hope, to think, based on the precedents, that maybe this won't be as calamitous as I know some people are fearing it is. So let's just wait and see, basically, how this shakes out.
I don't know.
I'm a little more cynical than that. Why is Vista selling them?
Well, Vista is out of the picture. So I mean, what was it, October 2020, there was an IPO, and so Datto is a publicly traded corporation right now.
So they went private to go public.
Yes.
Okay. So Vista sold them. Okay. So now Kaseya is acquiring Datto. Different businesses. One is cloud and storage. One is RMM and PSA.
Datto kind of plays in the RMM space too, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about this deal, and it was practically the first thing that popped into my head when I saw the headline on my phone, was, Kaseya has an RMM, a PSA, and a whole BDR product line through Unitrends, and Datto does all that too. So now you've got two of each one of those. And where's the and I did an interview. It was the first media interview that Fred Vacola, the CEO of Kaseya, did, and that was one of the questions I asked him. And so their take on that now, given what they're allowed to say for regulatory reasons, is this is not overlap. This is a competitive strength that basically, instead of having one flavor of RMM for you, they've got two. And so if you don't like that flavor, but this other one is a little more appealing to you, they don't have to say no and send you to another vendor. So they're positioning this now, before the transaction is closed, as the power of choice for an MSP.
It's inevitable, though. I mean, you can say we've got two flavors. We've got chocolate, we've got vanilla, but there's that middle lever in every ice cream machine, Rich, that gives you swirl. So I'm curious to see what the swirl is going to be on the other side of this.
I'm curious to see how many products or divisions get sold between those two companies, because it's too much overhead. I think that's marketing spin that, oh, now we have two. It doesn't make sense. We'll see.
Well, and Rich, you also said too that they're not going to spend $6 billion to go and wreck it. I don't know if you know the eccentricities of a lot of really, really rich people, but they get bored easily, and this could just be something that they're doing for fun.
Nice. Had 6.2 billion lying around, and I've seen everything worth seeing on Netflix. So,
Well, it's like, okay, HBO Max subscription, that's, another $8 a month, or 6.2 billion to play with the news cycle and mess up a lot of partners. That is entertainment for some people.
Meanwhile, as you were talking about the ice cream swirl, and there's probably a whole interesting conversation to be had about, blending RMM systems together. And do you wind up with the ice cream swirl, which is a good thing, or I believe that the term is a gross out, right? Where you put all 8 different kinds of soda, and which one do you wind up with?
Good question, Ronnie. What do you, if Kaseya and Datto tried to make a blend, what do you think is going to come out the other side?
I think the core business products at each company work well together, and I think that was what was appealing. But I think suggesting that they're going to keep all of their products and not have one cannibalize another or put one out to pasture or sell one off is silly. I think all 3 of those things are going to happen.
Okay. Interesting stuff, Rich. Anything else that Rob kind of highlighted? He talked a lot on stage. I was there for that. Anything else that he said that stood out to you? Or I think the don't do any knee-jerk reactions, I think, is probably good advice. Just not only about this, but just about most things in general. You want to think things through before you go off the deep end. But anything else he said that stood out to you?
He said transparency is going to be important for Datto going forward. I think they can only be transparent about what they know, and there's a lot that they don't know, like the rest of us. But there's a reason why Rob came and spoke at our event. I think he's really kind of making a point of speaking to as many MSPs, and this is something he's been doing for years anyway. But he really does want to get out in front of MSPs and talk to them and listen to them and take their questions. And he did say at one point in the conversation, if you've got concerns or complaints or whatever, pick up the phone and call. They're looking to be as open about what's happening and what's going to happen as they can be.
Very good stuff. Good. Well, we're going to move on. We got one more story we're going to talk about, and that is BLOKWORX. They've got something new that they're offering. Rich, tell us about that.
Yeah, and this is actually, it's an add-on to something that we have discussed relatively recently on the podcast here. In March, Cytracom, which is a company that is still probably best known for unified communications technology for MSPs. In March, they introduced a product called ControlOne, which is a secure network connectivity solution. So basically, it's this tightly integrated bundle of tools that combines SD-WAN and WAN failover and VPN and firewalls and service, basically everything that you kind of need to securely connect offices to each other online, to connect remote work sites to offices, the whole thing, and to secure it all basically in one, like I said, tightly integrated bundle. And it's an extension of what they've been doing. Basically, if you're going to be doing communications online, you've got to be able to, you need the network connectivity to make that work and work reliably and with strong performance, and then you've got to secure all that. And so now they've got a product that's sort of the backbone, the foundation for that communication service that they continue to offer. The only thing maybe that's not included with ControlOne is a managed service component. And so BLOKWORX, which is a managed security service provider and a company that has a longstanding relationship with Cytracom, and a longstanding relationship with ControlOne. They provided design input, they did beta testing, and so on. They are in the closing stages right now of preparing a managed service for ControlOne. So if you like the sound of the solution, but you don't necessarily want to manage it yourself on behalf of your clients, or if you prefer to have a security expert like BLOKWORX in the loop, watching the input that's coming from the system, because there is what Rob Bowles, a multi-time, I believe, guest host on this podcast, and the head of BLOKWORX, what he has said, there's like a SIM light kind of, SOC tool that is included within ControlOne. But BLOKWORX has an absolutely full-fledged, recently custom-written SIM solution of its own, and a room full of very experienced security analysts. And so now, if you're a ControlOne user, if you're interested in that product, you have the option of partnering with BLOKWORX. And then last thing to say quickly is because of this close working relationship between BLOKWORX and Cytracom, is when this rolls out, which will happen in Q3 or before, there will actually be a switch essentially inside the administration interface for ControlOne, so that if you want to do that and you want to outsource management to BLOKWORX, you'll be able to just kind of flip that switch inside the tool, and all the back-end connectivity that needs to happen to the BLOKWORX SOC will happen automatically from there.
That sounds like a pretty neat bundle and kind of a turnkey solution for this. Ronnie, what are your thoughts?
Again, so security is the future, and the companies that are focused there are going to do well. I like firewall as a service. I like it for the end user because they don't have to know anything other than paying their bill. The MSP's job and the firewall as a service provider's job is to keep that firewall up with the latest rules, latest technology, latest malware and anti-threat technology for a flat fee a month. I like that outsourced model. My question, Rich, is this delivered through a VM, or is there a hardware requirement here?
You can do either one. So if you're using this in an office space, the recommendation is that you use this appliance, this custom appliance that they've got. If you're connecting a home office to a work site, typically, I mean, you can put an appliance out there too, but the expectation is typically that you'll just do it with a VM.
Got it. So software VPN client on the home side or the small office side, and hardware concentrator at HQ.
Yep.
Got it.
Sounds
I like
good.
it. Yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, SonicWall did firewall as a service, Symantec did firewall as a service, and it just never really caught on. So it would be interesting to know if there were a little middle layer that MSPs can utilize.
Yeah, Rich, did they talk pricing at all? I'm sure some partners are going to be curious about that.
So when we say they, I mean, I discussed this solution with Rob Bowles from BLOKWORX. I haven't really talked about it with Cytracom, and it's worth pointing out, because I asked about this, will it be possible for a Cytracom partner to write one check, a month for both of these services? And the answer is no. I mean, you will be contracting with BLOKWORX and contracting with Cytracom separately. So there isn't like a bundled price for both things together. The bundling aspect, though, is just that you can enable it from inside your ControlOne implementation just by kind of clicking something.
Okay. Well, I'm sure folks will be interested on this. So head to the show sheet for episode 224, or open your description area on your phone or on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And so Ronnie, hit the subscribe button, like button, sideways, comment. We can do all of those things. Do that while you're there as well, and check that out. So Rich, that's all the news we got. Before we go to the break, we did talk about Rob Rae, who spoke at the ChannelPro SMB Forum event here in Chicago. We didn't really talk about that. That's kind of why we weren't here last week. Do you want to tell folks what happened and how that went?
It went great. I mean, and what are we going to say, right? It went terribly. Really, folks, really, if you were there, and there are folks in the audience right now who were in the audience, and I think they will tell you, just based on the feedback we got on site, that it went really, really well. And not just in terms of, having a room full of happy MSPs, but the content, which, we're delivering basically the same lineup of sessions at all 6 of the SMB Forum events that we're doing this year. But, obviously, it's going to vary a little bit show to show in terms of how things go. Everything went really, really well. in Chicago last week. And so, you know, the ChannelPro team, I feel safe in saying everybody kind of flew home after that, more, you know, tired because it's hard work to put on an event, folks, but we were all kind of feeling really, really good about how things went. And if you are curious to experience one of these events for yourself, folks, we've still got 4 more of them coming up this year. And the next one is going to be June 6th and 7th in Dallas, not far from DFW. Still plenty of time to sign up for that. We would love to see you out there. Events.channelpronetwork.com is the place to go, and you can easily register there. And then later on in the year, we're going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're going to be in Washington, D.C., near Dulles Airport. And then we will be in Southern California, near the City of Industry as well in November. And so check it all out at events.channelpronetwork.com. Register now, early and often, and we hope to see you at one of our shows.
Yeah, and I'll make that a little easier, folks. If you want to register for the Dallas show, which if you're anywhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, make sure you make it a point to go. You will get a lot out of it. It'll be great. I'm going to put, if for those listening, you go to channelproforum.com/Dallas. That'll take you right to the registration page for that event. Use promo code CPVIP. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to put a graphic up with a QR code. Scan that. It'll take you to the same place. CPVIP is the code that will get you in the door for free. So while it is free to attend, trust me, you will get a lot out of it. If you go, everybody was just tickled pink in Chicago, and we're going to carry that forward into the Dallas area as well. So make sure you join us. Rich, what were those dates again? June 6th and 7th, right?
Correct. June
6th and 7th. Be there, or as they used to say long ago, be square. And we don't want squares. And Ronnie's drawing a little square. That's what you're going to be if you're not there. So make sure that you are there. With that, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, Ronnie will be with us on the other side, as well as Juan Fernandez. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. You're not going to want to miss it. Stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome back to part 2 of ChannelPro Weekly. Take a step back and think about what IT solution providers did just 20 years ago. And it's a stark difference from today. The managed services model was just starting to take shape. And it's been a whirlwind of change brought forth by new technologies and, in the modern day, new threats. But where is managed services going? Here to talk more about that is Juan Fernandez, a former MSP and current CEO of the MSP Growth Coalition. Welcome, Juan.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt.
It's great to have you on. This is kind of the first time we got you in the interview role here on the show. So it's great. But I know you got a lot to talk about and a lot of cool things that we're going to dive into.
Always.
So for those who may not be familiar with you, first take a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit more about you and what you do these days.
Sure. I little background. I started off in IT almost 28 years now. So I am a traditional help desk guy that rose through the ranks, built many enterprise companies, and ultimately went off and spun off my own MSP, which was either, depending on who you're talking to, either a great success or my biggest failure. But which all spawned the opportunity for us to learn more. And then I created my second MSP a few years ago, about 6 years ago, almost 7 now, where I took it from 0 to about 20 million in about 6 years and had 12 locations across the US. So great story, fun, had a really good time. And then learned a lot about how to run a business and scale a business and really how to deliver technology meaningfully and what customers were looking for. And so shared a lot of that during that time, and found a lot of passion in giving back to the MSP community. And so as I exited that opportunity, I started up the MSP Growth Coalition to help MSP business owners kind of figure out some of the meaningful ways that they can scale their businesses and find success, because knowing what it's like to fail and knowing what it's like to succeed, if you can call it that, success, I wanted to share that. And so it's been a big passion project of mine to help move the channel forward. And that's where I'm at, doing that now.
Well, I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers' ears just completely perked up when you said 20 million in 6 years. How did you do that? Just the rough overview.
So I talk about it all the time. One of the big things for me is I call it this now. I built a profit protection program. And the last time I said that on a show, people kind of laughed a little bit. Even some people took that and added as their nickname, as their new PPP instead of what it's known for in the regular industry. But really what it was I created, it took me 7 years to figure out what I had done wrong in my first MSP. Although it wasn't a major failure, I didn't feel successful after my first MSP. And it wasn't because of anything I did wrong. I made one bad mistake and it really screwed things up, but I wanted to figure out what I had done wrong. And so I perfected the chess game, if you will, and I rehearsed it for years to try to figure out how people buy, why do they buy, what are the meaningful sales activities, what are people looking for, how do they like, all these different things, moving the chessboard around, and it helped me create a model. And in that model, this is almost predating really everything that we have in the ecosystem today, which is like flat rate or device-based programming. When I started in 2014, I put together the plan, and I had a revenue model that told me exactly how fast I would need to grow. Here's what it would look like per contract, per customer. Here's what it would look like, how many sales I needed to do, how many people I was going to need to make that happen. And I created this whole go-to-market strategy. I had a whole business plan around how to do it. And so when we started in January of 2015, we did exactly that. And we followed that plan to the T to the day that I left. And we knew what our scalability was. We knew when we needed to hire. We knew when we needed to be ramping up to look at new people. And of course, it just further affirmed itself as we kind of got down the road. We knew what our gross profit percentages were that we wanted to maintain. We knew how we wanted to sell, what our profit, what our net profit was going to be. It was really just a whole mechanism of success. So it was from the beginning, we did exactly what we said we were going to do, and we outperformed our 4-year budget that I had originally projected. We never changed it in 4 years, and in 3 years we outperformed it. In our 3rd year, we became profitable, and in our 4th year, we actually had paid back any of the initial investment that we had taken in those first few years. And then in our 5th and 6th years, it just took off. Like, we had built to scale at that point. We had about 12 locations, and then from that point forward, it just really took off. So it was really honestly, you asked the question, how do we do it? It was a plan from the beginning, right? And I think that that's what oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we don't always do. And I think that if there's any success that can be said there, it was from the process and the procedure, which built an amazing, successful opportunity for the people that were involved, because everybody knew what success looked like. It was constantly communicated, and which built a culture, which built the company. And ultimately, it's still running today. So I'm happy to say that they're still doing well.
Wow. So it's like you hear stories about entrepreneurs that start businesses and just kind of run them by the seat of their pants and get successful. But I think your story is probably far more likely to be successful than the latter, from what I'm hearing.
It was, and I think everyone has the opportunity, right? It's never too late to start to plan, right? We hear it all the time, not planning is planning to fail. And I think that I took that to heart, and I didn't have a plan in my original MSP. So I'm just like everyone else, right? I just found something that people wanted to buy. Then I started selling it. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, my first customer came from a pit of despair. I was sitting in a bar because I didn't know what I was doing. And I remember drinking a beer at the bar, and I was like, I may as well just go back and get a job. Happened to be, there's a guy sitting next to me that says, "Hey man, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I work on computers." And he said, "You know what? I need somebody to work on computers." Long story short, that was my first customer, but it came out of nowhere. And then that's what started ITS in its early years, right? So, and it's just the same thing. It kept feeding itself, and I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know how to start a business when I started my first one. I didn't even know how to get a business license. But the second time, I knew what I was doing. Like, I knew all the holes in the road to miss. And I was like, okay, we're not going to do any of that. And we're going to focus on this product set. We're going to have this offering. This is how it's going to deliver. This is the way it's going to tie back. We wanted to make sure that I was successful, and we did.
That's amazing, and it's a great story, and it kind of leads right into the conversation that we're going to have here. But talking about just managed services in general, and kind of where it's been, where we're at. There's been so much change that what solution providers were doing. I kind of said in the intro, what solution providers were doing, probably even at the time you were starting your first business, is just so different than what we're doing today, and probably going to be really different from where we're going to be in another 20 years. So let's talk about Juan's first business. What was it like? Were you more of you probably weren't even thinking managed services really at the time. You're probably thinking like, hey, they got broken computers, I'm going to go fix them. What was it like back then?
Yeah, I remember I was thinking that we were going to rival against, the modern PC builders of the era and, the go-to-market strategy. I remember the first one, and I say this all the time, was that I could do it cheaper. And I can tell you that that business model doesn't work at all. Like if your mindset is I can do it cheaper, stop right there and just quit what you're doing and don't do it, because doing it cheaper is not a good go-to-market strategy. Bring in additional value should have been what I said. And back when I started ITS, we were doing break fix services. We had a little retail shop, we were doing commercial residential. Back in those days, we were war driving. My team would drive around and, look for open access points and go around and just put a little note on their door. And we did a lot of residential work and said, hey, by the way, your Wi-Fi is open. We can get into everything, letting them know and educating the customers about their opportunities. But those are grinding days, man. Like back in the break fix days were brutal. And we had customers that bought networks, the struggles to get, partnerships with product, to even resell the thing, to be able to provide the support for it. Back in those days, in the early days, you had to be part of networks to be able to offer that type of support. It was different, much different than it is today.
So, Juan, you made the transition from break fix to managed services. You're one of that generation of people who are relatively new to that. I mostly want to talk with you about the future of managed services. You're one of my favorite people to talk about that with, and I kind of want to share that experience with our audience. But maybe to set things up a little bit, and let's just focus maybe on the last 3 years, even the last 2 years, the pandemic era, if you will. How have you seen the managed services market evolve?
Yeah, I think that it's been interesting, right? So, and I talk about this all the time because I'm always looking at, to the point that I mentioned earlier, I like to build products and services that people like to buy, because I'm always trying to take the no out of the sales cycle, because I'm a traditional technologist and I don't like no's, right? I'm more of a yes person. So like if I can just give you something and you just buy it, I'd much rather you do that than me have to like upsell you all these other things. And I started to pay attention to how people bought, and I started to look at the millennial market space, right? And I started to look at the way they bought and why they bought. And I remember asking my kids about products and services that I was putting together. And I was like, would you buy this? Why wouldn't you buy this? Why would you not buy it that way? And they were like, hey, Dad, I would like, rather than having an Android, I'd rather have a Mac, and I'd rather use Google. And I was like, I was paying attention to what was going on then. So for a lot of people that weren't, and that's where I came up with that whole X as a service thing. And when I did the Shark Tank thing and won that, that was what it was all about. I was focusing on the modern buyer and what they were interested in versus the technology that I was selling, or even my product. Didn't even care about that. I knew that if I could get to them and what they wanted, I could take the no out of there. And I just gave it to them, and they were like, yes, give me more. And I pivoted as well to create that whole everything as a service model. So the way they buy, we buy transactionally, right? That's the way we traditionally do it. We make it hard as MSPs to do business with, because we don't give it to them as a service. So, one of my big pushes was early on in 2015 and in 16, and especially in 17, was we need to be able to give it to them as a service every single month, so that they can consume over time and put them on 3-year life cycle, so I can give them a plan. And then every year I can just keep refreshing that every 3 years, and they never have to pay any more, but it's not a huge capital outlying expense. And I learned that from my 7 years in, as we call it, tuition, learning what I did wrong to get to that point. So from there, that's been one of the big things that I saw during the pandemic, was that we had to take our budgets, and the people that were really interested in like keeping their businesses afloat, I needed to be able to afford to continue to do business. You got to give me another answer. And that really pushed X as a service into the forefront, which should have been adopted early on, but now it's like main stage. So it's really nice to see people offering products and services all inclusive with one low rate price. And it's fun to watch packaging conversations go on, and they're like, all right, so how do I do this and how do I do that? And it's like, okay, no, you're putting that together wrong. Like it needs to be just one price instead of doing it this way. Like you're giving them too many options. Too many options gives you too many opportunities for a no, right? put it all together. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the all-inclusive nature of what you're talking about is important to emphasize, because there are going to be some people in the audience thinking, well, I'm a managed service provider. I sell managed services as a service. It's a, a recurring revenue subscription kind of model. But and the thing maybe that you picked up from, your millennial advisory board basically is they want something that is all inclusive and very simple.
Right.
And so you bundled all of the hardware in there. It's just like, you're going to pay me X dollars a month and I'm going to take care of everything you need to be productive. And that's going to include hardware, and I'm going to refresh that for you every 3 years. And it's going to, if you need firewalls in the office, that it was an all-inclusive kind of bundle that made, as you said, saying yes simple.
Yeah. It's just, it solves all the problems. And it really, I was also looking for the reverse of it, right? So when I'm being sold against, how do I make sure that my competition can't break my pricing apart? And I wasn't willing to negotiate, right? They're like, oh, well, you're more expensive than others. And I'm like, I'm sorry about that, but our product and our delivery and our mechanism and the care that you give with us is a lot more too, And so like, I knew what our worth was. And I wasn't, again, back to the profit protection program, whatever I built and still to this day and help other MSPs build, I teach them to stay firm on their pricing and build value around their conversation versus the negotiation for cheaper, right? And I think that, to your point, that's where we've seen this immersion from per device cost to per user. And then kind of that back and forth, you're kind of seeing that ebb and flow between the two to figure out which one works best. And for some MSPs, depending on their stacks, one of them may work better than the other. But I think ultimately, that's where we're seeing that new ecosystem. And I love to see it because I'm seeing so much more unique IP, so many more unique delivery mechanisms being added into that value add, instead of just being a product and just managing over the top. Now we're seeing data analytics, and we're seeing customer success, and we're seeing all these different things put into that, which is making that more valuable to the customer.
So we've spoken about the past and the present of managed services. Let's dive into the future, because that's really what I kind of wanted to chat about with you. And some of what I want to ask you about is inspired by a panel that you led at the Channel Partners Conference not too long ago, where you had some MSPs on the stage with you, and you were, one of the things you talked about is, where is this market going? What are the issues that people need to be thinking about going forward? There was one in particular that I want to start with, and it's partly for selfish reasons. I'm going to be writing an article about this in ChannelPro's July issue. I just started thinking about it, and so that two birds with one stone. I'll get some input on this from you.
I'm glad we can help.
The topic is marketplaces, because you highlighted that as something that MSPs need to be thinking about. Jay McBain, formerly of Forrester, now of Canalys, has been talking about this a lot. I found it wise in my life not to bet against either of you guys. So I know this is important, but I want to understand why. So let's just start, first of all, by defining marketplaces from your perspective. What is it that we're talking about that MSPs need to be thinking more about?
So back to the whole point around how we make it hard to do business with us. Customers, think about it. I mean, when you go home at night and you're looking to buy stuff, especially during the pandemic, how many had people their stuff coming to them from Amazon? I mean, I hate to drop a name out there, but I mean, if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to know you're lying, because we order a lot from Amazon. Those click to order services and products are the way we want to buy. Right. And so when you look at the stats around how people are buying and what the millennial marketplace looks like, and the Gen Zs and the way they want to interact, they like to buy things as they need them, and they want to click and buy. And so if you're not bringing to light your products and services in marketplaces, or in a mannerism that the modern buyers are wanting to buy, then that's only leaving you open to this small subset of businesses that want traditional. And that's waning by the day. Modern businesses are flexible. They're very remote. They want to deliver products and services to a multitude of remote employees. And so your offering needs to pivot at least toward some light of being able to deliver that. And marketplaces, as they emerge, are giving us light to be able to do that, where in certain circumstances, and I don't mean like just marketplaces, for instance, the big thing there is when I'm saying marketplace, I don't mean a place for MSPs to go and buy stuff from. That's not what I mean. I mean marketplaces that you can buy products from, build your unique IP around it, and then repopulate that to your customer base to give them a storefront, and then you can follow up with them and then look at products and services that they bought from you and look at your customer penetration modeling, integrate with the CRM. It's just a much more elegant version of the way we do business now. It's much more formal. It's more executive-like. People want to function and they want to work around those types of things. So it's taking everything that we learned during the pandemic and realizing the models that they wanted to interact with, and then giving them that opportunity to go and buy and allowing their employees to buy. Because even now, if you look at some of the way businesses are functioning, they're giving their employees to say, okay, you have a certain amount of budget, feel free to go ahead and buy whatever you want. You can go to this marketplace, you can go in and click and buy whatever it is. If you need a headset, if you need a desktop or a laptop or whatever, or they're making it part of a meaningful employee onboarding. Hey, go pick your type of laptop. I have a Mac, or I have an Apple, or I have a Mac, or I have a Chromebook, or I have a Windows device. Go make your selection inside this marketplace. All your stuff will get brought and drop shipped to you. Our IT department will have it fully ready to go. All the security is ready, so don't worry about nothing. That's what people want. And that's where these marketplaces are really moving forward. Again, it means a lot to the channel, but it also means a lot to the customer. So it's really exciting to see the opportunities that are coming from marketplaces.
And so you're talking about an MSP building a marketplace, essentially, presumably utilizing some kind of platform out there and incorporating that in their website, and that becomes part of how their customers can consume what the MSP makes available?
That's correct. 100%. And that's interesting to watch, because let's just say this, for instance, we see so many other industries stepping into managed services like legal, and you see insurance, and you see all these other becoming managed services companies, or they're buying, like telco is buying managed service providers, and then they're offering managed services to their customers, right? It's the same thing as us buying all these other products and then offering them back to our customer, like cybersecurity insurance and all these other different opportunities, Google ad space, and all these other opportunities where we're becoming brokers of technology back to our customer through our trusted relationships, versus allowing the marketplaces to be subject to us having to learn what products our customers just bought. Now we're kind of controlling the other side and saying, look, these have been pre-vetted by us. Here's all the great opportunities we can offer to you through our meaningful partnerships, versus, hey, Juan, I just bought this new thing today. I need to get you to come make it work. It's just a little bit of a different model there. And I think that that's why you're seeing traction with it.
Now, is this a model you can apply to pretty much everything that you do? Because it's one thing, like in the scenario you were talking about, where a company tells work from home employees, go to this website, equip yourself with what you need, and that is something that you can imagine somebody relatively easily doing on a self-serve basis through your marketplace, and appreciating the fact that there is a marketplace. But then when you think about the MSP as the cliche alert trusted advisor who wants to really understand your business and then propose proactively some things you can do with technology, is there a part of what the partner does that still needs to be somewhat face-to-face, interactive, human, versus delivered through the marketplace?
Yeah, and I think that's really, the marketplace is just a tool. It's just like anything else. I think that if you use it as a tool, you can let it be the tool that you need it to do. Like if you got it where it's using CRM to follow up on products and services that you propose to them, or making a reminder of, hey, in our last quarterly business review, you said that you wanted to go ahead and implement these services at this period of time. If so, then go ahead and buy it from the marketplace, and then we'll go ahead and schedule that opportunity. And it's taking us out of the sale of the product and giving them an opportunity to buy on their own the way they want to at their pace. But then the face-to-face is still the value proposition of, hey, the seat at the table needs to be sat at, not sold at, right? And when we're having conversations with customers at the table, it needs to be about return on investment and empowering their people and productivity, versus, hey, I need you to buy this right now. And I think that that's where we found, and for me, again, I say this all the time, I don't always want to be selling. I'd much rather be bringing value on how to keep your business operational and thinking through policy, process, procedure, security, talk tracks, education, and then let's just buy what we need to buy when you're ready to buy it. You know you need it. It's not a matter if you do or don't, but you can get in the marketplace and let the tools remind them they need to do it versus me calling them all the time and saying, hey, can you buy that tomorrow? So I think it's still the same, but now we're bringing a different kind of value, right? We're staying at the table instead of getting up to go to the closet, right? And that's where I think that it's becoming more attractive to us as MSPs and MSP business owners, is that we get to bring the real value that we're supposed to versus them recognizing us as the technician that's going to go do the work and deliver buy the products and all those other things. So, and that's where I think I see it. And those that have adopted marketplaces, I watch how fast they grow because of it. And I watch the value that they deliver their customers through it. And I think that it's just a better fit. And I think it's going to be a big thing for the channel, if you ask me.
Or the manufacturers can make it easier to onboard a darn employee, Juan.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
We wouldn't need marketplaces. We wouldn't need Okta. We wouldn't need any of this stuff if everyone knew what an E3 license was and how much it cost and what you got with it. That's never going to happen. So until the complexity comes down, it's always going to be a salesman's ball game to explain this stuff in the sales process, to do the demos, to get their guys in and demoing the product, whatever the product is. And then it's a matter of digesting and making sure the customer's happy. But it's still sales. It always has been.
Oh, I agree. My thoughts is that as we see these marketplaces, we're starting to see a little bit of a joint effort in customer success, though, because now it's like we're starting to realize that vendors need us in the managed services realm to be able to deliver that product to the customer. So we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick in that customer success joint messaging, which I think is good. And I think if we do it right, we have an opportunity to really fix the problem that Ronnie's talking about, and hopefully bring to light, some of those opportunities and fix some of that.
Now, at the end of your panel, Juan, you asked the MSPs on stage with you to name one or two or three sort of themes for managed services going forward. And I want to kind of get into one or two of those with you, because you listed a few as well, one of which was also mentioned by Josh Weiss, who was an MSP from Southern California, who was on that panel. Like 2-3 days after that panel, he was guest host on the show, and we talked with him a little bit about automation, because he listed automation as a key theme, and so did you. So talk a little bit about what you mean by automation and why you think that's so important going forward.
Well, to like what Ronnie was just mentioning, I think the auto deployment component, like, using, certain tools that are out there. I won't say any names on the show, not to plug their product, but there's a lot of things that have changed a lot of what we do as managed services provider. And I think that automation and, there's a lot of different tools out there that are securing us, as well as also being able to deliver these products and services more meaningfully, where before, that's where we spend a lot of our time providing a lot of our services, was in the setup of computers. And now I can order a computer, and if I have it configured right on the back end, I can ship it to you, have it deployed. As soon as you sign in, all your security will get downloaded to it, and all of a sudden you're working. So I've increased productivity in the workplace that fast, right? And so when we're talking about automation, it's about how do I empower my customers to be more productive in a much quicker realm, and also how do I keep them more secure? So there's so much automation that's happening right now that it's super exciting to watch. Although we do see a little bit of our unique IP being diluted, because that's where we used to make our money. We have to realize that now we need to move our cup to a different table, right? It's like, okay, I don't do that anymore now, but I know how that works. So I know how to.
I think it's bigger than that. I think the whole system's broken. I mean, you remember SysPrep 32?
Oh, I do remember Cisco.
Yeah, I mean, I was using that in the 90s for Scholastic to strip SIDs and user IDs from a machine so that we could get machines coming in from Dell ready to go. Oh, just log in, but it never worked, right? And you know what? And today it's still a little buggy, and it's only worth doing it for the biggest customers. So a small MSP with small customers is not going to go down the imaging front very quickly or very easily. The upfront cost of startup is not worth it for a small guy with less than 500 computers, probably the customer, because the MSP is going to charge that customer for that work. So it really makes sense. So well, how can we cut deployment time down? It's not licenses these days. It's really hardware in the door and making it last. But you know, the trend I think moving forward is purely security. It's stopping people from having access to your devices and making you you know, as safe and secure every night as you can.
I agree. I was on a couple webinars this week where we talked about ring fencing, and back to the old traditional days, Ronnie, back where we were actually command and control, and we removed admin credentials. Now we can do that through software deployments on, you know, BYOD devices. Like, you're right. And that's where the conversation is moving from the way we thought about it to a different conversation around security, which, to your point, it's always really been around that. Now we're just kind of moving it from one place to another place, but it's still the same thing, right? We're still trying to lock the user down. So, but again, to your point, automation in that realm can still be done, right? We can set up policy, procedure, and control, click, 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 you enroll, device secure, right? So again, automation, I think, is a hot topic. I'm glad that we don't have to script all that stuff anymore, Ronnie, because as much as we did, I don't miss it. You know.
You know, it reminds me of a slogan, like a T-shirt slogan that a vendor a lot of people know named Lion Guard used to use, and they had these T-shirts that said, "Let the robots do the boring stuff." And I mean, that's essentially what you're talking about. Let's automate the rote configuration. Very important, and important to do consistently, but also not terribly strategic, high value kind of activity, so that we have more time basically to do the really high value, strategic, trusted advisor kind of stuff with customers. And then the other thing that kind of struck me as interesting, because I mean, automation has been a topic of conversation in managed services for many years. You know, I mean, like for years, once upon a time, ConnectWise had this Automation Nation event that it did. That, you know, that their RMM product was all about that. Yeah. But it was really the focus was really on technician productivity, which is an important part of the automation story. But you're talking about it as an end user satisfaction issue as well. I'm going to make you the customer more productive, and I'm going to get you whatever it is that you need faster and more effectively because I've automated things on my end.
Yeah, I like to call it auto magically, right? I heard that and I stole that, and I don't know who I got it from, but it was great when I heard it. So it's I can tell you, when you demonstrate that to a customer, when you demonstrate the ability for them to function easily, when you hear what customers' needs, wants, and fears are, when you have a conversation with them at the deal table, most of them is, one of our biggest challenges is onboarding new employees. And if you solve that problem through automation, and you just say, all you got to do is place an order and that thing is drop shipped and it works, they're going to be like, oh, right, when do I sign, right? And that's where, again, back to that chess move, I wanted to make sure customers had the opportunity. So when I looked at opportunities building in my MSP or even helping other MSPs now, it's like, what are you doing to simplify their problems, right? Because you know, when you're going to go to the deal table, they're going to have problems. In automation, if you can say that and you can make that happen, people will buy from you. And then they're going to tell everyone else, I have this IT company that all I did was order a computer and like literally everything was there. We do it with our cell phones now. Have you guys ever done a smart transfer on an Android device? Like, it moves everything over, you know what I mean? So like, if we're able to do that for our customers on a Windows device where all their stuff moves, and of course, if you just stick it in the cloud, it moves fine. Sync their desktops like we used to do back in the day through group policy, Ronnie. You know, file and folder redirection, it's the same thing, right? It's just a matter of it looking cool. Now cloud solutions allow us to do that, to where we can represent that same experience. And of course, with auto app deployment and security.
You heard it here, folks. Juan wants to go back to roaming folders.
Roaming profiles, man, let's do it. Folder redirection for the win.
It's funny. I worked a big AV project for ESPN a couple of months ago, and they had it so tight that when someone walks into their conference rooms, the room reads their cell phone. If that person is scheduled to be in the meeting, it logs them into the meeting automatically, no sign-ins or anything. That's nice.
This is where we're going. That's what I'm talking about. Like, you know, that, and again, there's a new world coming with automation that we can't even fathom yet, that, you know, obviously won't make it to the managed services arena because of our customer type. But to your point, Ronnie, in the enterprise, my gosh, there's some amazing things happening there.
So I want to talk about another one of the themes that you brought up. And interestingly, this too is something that we've been talking about in the context of managed services for a long, long time. But you see, you know, maybe a different need or a different sort of meaning to this. The word is integration, right? And I mean, you know, there are lots of tools that MSPs rely on. Integrating those has been a priority for MSPs for a long, long while. Why do you see integration, and in what sense do you see integration as a key to the future of managed services?
So one of the big things is I think that the MSP community as a whole, for the longest time, there's been a community here, right? Me and Ronnie know each other, you know, everyone in the MSP community knows each other. And what we hear and see now, and we think integration, we think about it from a product perspective. What we were talking about there is MSP integration. And what I mean there is that there's been a lot of MSPs that have really created some amazing things. And as a community, I don't know that we do a good enough job of being honest with each other. One of the things I've been trying to break down for years is just being 100% open. I gave away my business models. I've been giving away my pricing for years. I've been telling people how I do it on purpose because I'm trying to foster community and I'm trying to get everyone at least to hear something different, right? You know, the work I did at ChannelPro was just because I felt like it. It wasn't because I was getting anything out of it. I just wanted to share. And here's the thing, like even now, you're seeing some MSPs that are creating great MSSPs. You're seeing MSPs that are creating great data warehouses and data lakes and data AI products. And they're creating great data analytics companies. You know, there's so many different things that are out there that we can be offering. And again, if we were in a marketplace, we could just say, hey, I could take these things and I could offer them to my customer. And all of a sudden we'd have a different kind of integration where we're relying on each other to be successful, to the point where Ronnie was saying earlier, where we have this problem. And I don't know that's 100% a problem. I have to be careful there. But there's a challenge between the products that we get and the delivery and the customer that we are able to do. There's some opportunity there. And I think that as we become together as a community and everyone becomes proficient in something, we should be working together and integrating with each other to be able to offer those products and services out. And I think that we can move past some of that competitive aspects of, hey, you do it better than I. You know, when I did that last MSP build, you know, a good portion of the company was print. And in the print industry, they all leverage each other to work together to provide services over and above on top of other people's territories. They're like, hey, I need something done over here. Can you get it done for me? And I don't know that we do a good enough job here. I know we do some of that, but I don't know that we do it like other industries do it, where they're really, really, really integrated to where they're like, I know what they do really good and I can leverage them and we buy and sell their services and white label them as mine. So that's what
at that point, I wanted to start a business that was just project managers for MSPs. And that's all we did. We didn't pick up our own customers. We just did your project management. Kept information flowing, kept answering questions, said, oh no, you're in trouble. Stuff like that. I think that's a great business model because most companies don't do it well. And if you have a good project manager, he's a salesman and he's bringing business in and he's that important. So I think we could affect some change in organization and customer satisfaction through project management.
I don't disagree. I think that strategy and structure is the key to success, right? And so anytime customers feel like they're getting meaningful movement forward, that's where it's about, right? And I think you're going to need somebody like that, Ronnie, to kind of make this all work because, again, that integration piece is talking to each other first and foremost, getting on the same schedule, making sure the projects run right, making sure that it's done for the customer right. Those are all challenges. And I think that from that perspective, that's what I'm looking for in integration is watching other MSPs become part of a bigger network of opportunity to provide the customer a higher level of service to whatever meaningful way we can do it.
And so, I mean, you're thinking beyond partnering with other partners and really sort of integrating business processes, basically, really kind of becoming a part of one another's organization.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we're fully transparent on the way, again, it's going to go back to the fact that we have a process for success. If I gave you my process for success and you understood it and you could explain it to your customer, then you could go and present that to your customer, right? And so, but again, you would need that. And that's where I think the challenge lies, is that we don't always have a process for success in whatever meaningful activity that we're offering. And that's where I think we got to get to. And then everyone else can share, hey, here's how I'm doing it. And they're like, oh my God, I love that. Like, can I leverage you in that way? And it's the same thing for us. Like when we created the VCIO school, we had a process for delivering that product. And then they're like, oh my God, I need that, right? And so it's just a matter of us getting to that point where we can share that with the community and say, here's what I'm doing. We see it happen all the time in the Slack channels, right? Hey, look at what I'm doing over here. And then everyone's like, hey, I like that. Let's share it and do more of that. And I think that we just need to do more.
Ronnie, anything to add there? Or Rich, you got one more question?
Yep.
Well, let's let Ronnie chime in though.
Well, I like the collaborative nature of MSP to begin with, because it's a lot of different companies coming through the channel, from your manufacturers, your distributors, all the way down to the end user and the kids at home who are pirating that end user technology. So it's a lot of people moving together. Even a one-person company has got many different layers of people helping them and feeding them. So collaboration is very important. I was a member of many user groups over the years, ConnectWise, Autotask, and things like that for the MSP function. And I learned from my peers. I learned from my competitors. And I think we all do. And anybody that thinks that they can't learn, stay away from us. I don't want to teach it.
So, final minutes here, Juan. We're running short on time, but I do want to give you a chance to just share a few thoughts about the final sort of keyword for the future that you mentioned at during that panel discussion, and it's kind of a big one that I'm asking you to boil down. But innovation was what you were talking about, and so I guess the importance of innovation speaks for itself. But what do you have in mind? What kind of innovation do MSPs need to be focusing on?
I'm really excited about what everyone that's out there started off their business hoping for something. And it wasn't just to always clean up everyone else's mess. We hoped for a successful business at some point. I know every single person that started one never had the intent of, oh, I want to go bankrupt in a few years and not have a great business. I didn't with any of my businesses. And one of the great things is that when you build your strategy, your process, your procedure, and you're getting your culture underway, and you got something going on, you hit this phase called innovation. And I stayed in that phase for a long time with the previous MSP. And I constantly was dumping out what we were doing well to stay innovative, because it caused us to create pressure inside to go do something different. And I really hope that MSPs that are out there are looking for meaningful ways for themselves to be able to create pressure in their organization to do something different, to figure out a new problem, to create unique IP. And that is what I'm excited about, because I think all of us have an opportunity here after the pandemic. We learned a lot, right? And I'm not saying that we're out of it yet, but we learned a lot about the way people do things and what products and services that they need. I know that everyone has a plan or a thought around something that they need to do. And I say, go for it. Like, you started your business, like there's no lack of opportunity. If you got something out there, like Ronnie just said, he's thinking about doing a project management company. That's innovation, right? Because it's something that's needed and it's something that's ready, that's something that people want and need. And we saw a lot of wants and needs. Now we just need to understand the only thing that's holding us back is fear. So don't be afraid to go and do it. I'm a good product of that, right? I shifted from my own MSP to go help other MSPs because I saw the need. And that's why I'm saying, innovation is just allowing yourself to be creative, to go after that dream again and just go do it. And that's where I'm at. That's why I talk about innovation.
Very good. Ronnie, I want to give you the last word.
I think security. I think security moving forward, and the companies that dial down the complexity on security procedures from the WAN in protecting businesses all the way down to protecting Wi-Fi and handhelds, BYOD devices, agnostic devices, anything like that. I think those companies are going to do very, very well. And the ones that stay clean and don't go through data breaches and leaks and CEOs getting bought by VCs and stuff like that, I think stand the chance of doing very, very well.
That's good. All good advice and a good place to wrap up. Juan, thank you so much for being on. If there's if anyone out there who would like to get in touch with you, learn more about you, get in touch with the MSP Growth Coalition, where can they go? How can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. Could find me at most of all the MSP events. I'll be down at ChannelPro coming up soon as well. So if you got LinkedIn, come see me. Feel free to email me, Juan at MSP Growth Coalition, MSP-growth.com.
Awesome stuff. Juan Fernandez, CEO of the MSP Growth Coalition. Thank you so much for being on. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, Ronnie will still be with us on the other side to break down the show and have a little bit of fun. You won't want to miss it. Stick around. We will be right back. And welcome back to part 3 of ChannelPro Weekly. What a great interview with Juan Fernandez. Big thanks to him for coming on. Rich, we talked about a lot of things, and even after the interview kind of ended, is that we ran out of time, and I didn't get to ask a whole lot of questions, but I was going to ask him about how consolidation is going to be impacting managed services industry as we go forward, because there's a lot of that happening going on, not only in the vendor space, but also in the MSP space with these kind of big, larger conglomerate MSPs. We might save that topic for another show. But there was a lot of cool things we talked about. What are any takeaways that you'd like to highlight?
I guess that, there's so many things that you could dive into individually. I guess the big picture thing to focus on there is just how what it means to be an MSP has changed and is changing. And it really plays right into the consolidation theme, because you have to kind of factor in what the businesses out there want and how they're buying and how they want to buy, but also who they're going to be able to buy from as these larger firms out there are competing with you. And so, not a great time to be sort of standing pat with older ways of doing things. I really do think this is one of those moments in the history of the evolution of managed services where you really do need to be kind of rethinking what it means to be an MSP and keeping up with the industry, because there are a number of different forces out there that could pose an existential threat to you if you don't.
Yeah, really, really good insights there, and good point. Ronnie, any highlights that you have?
I just like that he brought it back to collaboration and MSPs working together, sharing resources. That's always going to be the easiest way to succeed is partnerships. And I'm always brought back to an old saying, is that none of us knows as much as all of us. So pick the right partners and make your job easier.
Yeah, I really liked him talking about kind of the everything as a service model, because I honestly believe that that's kind of the direction that we've had to go, and the fact of keeping it simple. And when you think about the upcoming generation of people, we're gonna have twice the technology available to people that are going to be kind of growing up into the next 10, 15 years, but they're going to have half the computer skills that our generation had, because it is all so simple and managed and crazy. So simplicity, ease of use, and consistent, all-in-one pricing, I think, is going to make a big difference going forward. Ronnie, thoughts?
I agree. The Chinese menu type of thing for clients, pick this, pick that, and a discount at the bottom type of thing. It just will make it easy for your customers to consume, make it easy for your customers to understand. And when they don't understand, and they don't understand, sit there and explain it again.
And I'm going to copyright a new company name, because I'm going to start up my own MSP tomorrow. I'm going to call it IT Dim Sum, so no one can take that. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go get the URL for that.
One from column A and 2 from column B, and have a great time.
And you get a free one of those free sticky bun bean. What are those called? The Chinese bun with the bean
pork
in it.
Buns? The steamed pork buns.
Those are even better. All of my customers will get an order of steamed pork buns with every hardware bundle. So come to me for all your IT needs and hunger needs apparently too.
Pork buns as a service.
Buns as a service. I could go on. Rich, you got to stop me now. I could go on all day. All right. Great stuff. Big thanks again to Juan Fernandez for coming on. We'll hopefully have him back down the road at some point. So Ronnie, the last several times you've been on, we've had museum picks. As those know, we're kind of taking a break from museum picks because I kind of ran out of interesting things that I actually own to talk about. And we're rethinking about that particular segment, and we're gonna bring hardware picks back, but it's gonna be more of a focus on like not stuff that I actually have physically in my house because I'm just out of. Unless you want to hear about a 10100 network card, I've got a whole drawer of those. We could cover a different brand every week, but I have a feeling that wouldn't be very interesting. So that'll come back. But we've been playing a lot of 5 questions, and everybody loves 5 questions anyway. So Ronnie, this might be new to you because you've always had a museum pick to talk about. So the way 5 questions works, we're going to ask you 5 questions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back and forth. No gotchas, nothing embarrassing. It will be something off topic and still learn and something fun to learn a little bit more about you. The shtick is that Rich and I must think of them on the fly. We are not allowed to write them in advance, which means that sometimes the questions are crazy or weird. But it is always fun. So that's
ready for my first question.
Ronnie, he is rare to go. I love it. Rich, question number 1 to you.
So Ronnie, you are a man of many interesting hobbies, and you kind of hinted at comic books a little bit earlier in the show. I may come back to that, but among other things, you are a cigar aficionado.
Correct.
So I'm going to ask you if you can identify the single greatest cigar you've ever smoked.
Yes. The company is Arturo Fuente. The line is their Opus X. And their cigar is the Perfection No. 2. It's just a perfect size. It's beautiful, great smoke. If you can find Opus X's, they're very hard to find. They're probably going to run you $40 plus for a decent one. But that Perfection No. 2 is my favorite smoke on the planet, and I will pay for them when I find them.
Awesome, good stuff. All right, question number 2 to me. I'm not going to go down the cigar route. So you just bought a house. Tell me like the top 2 things that has surprised you about home ownership.
How quiet it is until it isn't. What was that noise? I used to live in a city. There were noises everywhere. You sleep through them. Now, wait. So I was woken up last night by somebody dragging a box down their driveway, down the block. So yeah, I got to get used to noises. I have to get used to woodpeckers. I have to get used to things like that.
Awesome.
This doesn't qualify as question number 3, but I just got to ask because I don't quite know where you have bought. So like how out in the boonies are you with this house?
Binghamton, New York, 3 hours outside of New York City.
Okay.
Wow.
Definitely
an
out there.
adjustment.
Yeah. The average,
okay.
And just a quick note on Binghamton, same crime, same poverty level as New York City. The average house in this country is $350,000. My house was a third of that.
Wow. Okay.
Bye, New York. I'll see you when I come down for a concert, but 44 years in New York City is enough. I'm done paying the taxes and it's time to save some money.
You can't buy a parking spot in New York City for what you paid for a house. So yeah, very, very good. So question number 3, you and this will make more sense to people watching on video maybe than listening, but you have, I believe, competed in, you have judged beard growing contests. So for people who take their beard way more seriously than clearly I do you have any what is your number 1 beard grooming tip?
Patience. Just wait. You don't have to do anything. Just wait. Don't trim it. Leave it alone. Might take 6 months to get going and show you something. Rich, I love what you're working there. The salt and pepper. I'm waiting for more gray in mine. It looks great. I would let it get just a little bit longer. Trim it to whatever you're using, about a 2 or a 3 on the beard trimmer. Go to a 4. See what it looks like on the next one. Yeah, I'm all about the beards. I'm all about fun competitions like that. It started in Coney Island in Brooklyn. And shout out to those guys, Adam Reelman, the new creative director down in Coney Island. put on a nice show a couple of years. It didn't continue through COVID, but I think it will continue again. And if I'm asked to be back, it was a lot of fun. It was a privilege to be a judge of that competition for a couple of years.
All right, awesome. All right, question number 4 to me, Ronnie. I know you do some traveling. You get around. Kind of a simple question. What's one of your favorite places to vacation? Ooh, I stumped him. That must have been a hard one, right?
Well, because I've been a bunch of cool places. I don't want to just pick any random place in the Caribbean or wherever. And
so give us top three. Then it takes the pressure off to kind of nail down one.
Jamaica, Aruba, and Amalfi in Italy. The Amalfi Coast near Naples is the most beautiful place in the world. And if and when I hit the lottery, that is where you will find me. Walking the streets with a bottle of wine and a sandwich and meat and cheese shops and just absolute heaven on the cliffs of the Mediterranean. Just beautiful.
I'm gonna have to look that one up. That sounds really good, actually.
It's where pizza was invented.
Oh, pizza. Oh, I should have asked you a pizza question. Okay, maybe next time. Rich, question number 5 to you.
Okay, so I will go to the comic books because that came up before. What is the comic book in your collection right now that you are most proud of?
Amazing Spider-Man number 129, first appearance of the Punisher. It's got a value of about $4,000 on it today, but I bought it when I was a kid for $200 in 1988 or so. I was 10 or 11. And I used my allowance money to lay it away at the comic book shop. And when I had about $60 paid off, I got grounded. My mother said, no allowance for a month. I'm like, that's not going to work, Mom. It's not going to work. So I took her down to the comic book shop. She paid the rest of the book off. She wound up holding it and not giving it to me until Christmas. But it's one of the favorite books in my collection. I may never sell it unless I could trade it up to a very high grade, but I'll likely be buried with that one.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you, Ronnie, for playing along. A lot of fun. Always good learning a little bit more about our guests. Very fun stuff. So, Rich, with that, before we say goodbye to Ronnie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we might have missed? And we might have missed a lot because we had a special edition last week. And by the way, big thanks to the folks at Datto for making that happen, because we don't normally do shows event weeks, but because of them, we were able to kind of work it out and have a special edition, and that worked out great for everyone. But we might have missed a lot. What did we miss, Rich? And what might be coming down the road?
Well, as we often remind our audience here, a great way to catch up on stuff you might have missed is to read our In Case You Missed It column, which appears every Friday on ChannelProNetwork.com. And you may have missed some things this week, folks, because there were a lot of conferences going on and a lot of big vendors announcing stuff. Intel held its Vision conference, SAP did its Sapphire conference, Google did its I/O conference, Western Digital did a conference. I'm afraid for their sake, nobody even knew that was going on. So there's a lot of news from conferences this week, and James is going to catch you up on all of that stuff. There's some new collaboration hardware from WebEx, a new collaboration pack between Lion Guard and Gradient MSP. And then he also has a story for you about how knowing pi to the 4th digit made somebody close to $200,000. And if you're wondering how that could be possible, James Gaskin will explain that to you on Friday in our latest In Case You Missed It. Looking ahead to next week, Ingram Micro is going to be hosting their Cloud Summit event. This will be the first time since 2019 that they're doing it in person. That's taking place in Miami, and I will be there. So that is where I will be contributing to this podcast next week. Veeam is doing their big event, VeeamON, in Las Vegas next week. The good folks at Seven Figure MSP, an MSP consultancy, are doing their latest event in Dallas. So lots of conference activity taking place next week.
Sounds like a lot's gonna be going on. So lots to cover, lots to learn about. And where can folks do that? Folks, ChannelProNetwork.com is the website. Go to each and every day, make it your homepage. That is where you will read about all of this stuff that Rich is talking about. So make sure you do that every day. You'll also find not only the news that you're going to see, but you're also going to see articles, white papers, resources, downloads, all kinds of great stuff to help you make your business better, keep you on top of what's going on, and help make you more money, which is really, really important, particularly these days. Absolutely. So do that. Of course, subscribe to the Channel Pro Weekly podcast, where Rich will be on to talk about all that stuff he's doing. We're everywhere podcasts are, Google Podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, blah, 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 all those. So go there and subscribe. Go subscribe in every place. So it never hurts to have more than one subscription, just in case. If you're on YouTube, we did it before. Subscribe up here, like down here, hit the comment buttons, leave a comment. There's other buttons on YouTube. They make you hit a lot of buttons. Just hit them all, and then you'll be all good to go. But we appreciate those who like to watch along. Ronnie, it was great having you on. Thank you so much for being here. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, learn more about you, where can they go? How can they find you?
BigRonnie.com.
And it's a great website. It really is.
Real easy.
BigRonnie.com is where you can find him. Thanks for being on. Hope you had fun.
As always, thank you very much. I look forward to doing it again with you guys. It's
always a pleasure having you on, and you will absolutely be back down the road. And hopefully we bump into you at one of our shows one of these days. I think we're going to be in, we missed Newark, but we're going to be in Charlotte or DC. That's still kind of in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, not far. DC's close.
Yeah, so maybe we'll hopefully see you there as well as other folks. So with that, we are going to say goodbye to Ronnie, and we will see everybody in episode 225 next week. See you then.